For years now, lost media has been a hot topic on the internet. Typically, people have their favorite pieces, typically well-known pieces like Hitogata, Clockman, or Metropolis. Still, there are many more pieces that, while not as well known, deserve not only equal time in the spotlight, but just as much chance to be found. These are those pieces. This is lesser-known lost media.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and welcome to volume 61 of Lesser Known Lost Media, the show where I cover lost media that other YouTubers just don't talk about all that much. How it works, if you're joining us for the first time, is we start with 4 normal, family-friendly, safe-for-work pieces of lost media, and then we end after a brief ad break with a spicy piece. It's pretty straightforward. We've done it 60 times before, so let's get into it. Coming in at number 1, we have £1,000 Reward, a lost band British drama film from 1913. £1,000 Reward is a 1913 British drama film produced by the Anchor Film Company, directed by Harold Heath, and it starred Heath as Jack Strong in a story involving an escapee of Portland Prison who later joins a coining gang operated by Countess Zula, played by Muriel Palmer. The film holds the dubious honor of becoming the first film to be banned in the United Kingdom by the Home Office, triggered following the establishment of the British Board of Film Classification. Though a detailed plot summary of this movie has not been found, parts of the film's narrative have been preserved thanks to newspaper articles. Now, the film was completed by December of 1913 and had been unveiled in at least one theater, but just as it appeared the film would be showcased across the UK and Portland, it came under scrutiny of the BBFC. The BBFC originally began operations as the British Board of Film Censors, now British Board of Film Classification, in January of that same year, with George A. Redford installed as its first president. During its initial operations, around 120 films were reviewed per week by a board of examiners. They could give a production a U rating for universal, an A for works containing adult content, or refer the film to Redford for a more thorough review of potentially problematic content. Of 7,510 works reviewed that year, at least 22 of them were banned for various reasons, including but not limited to being overly sexual, promoting animal cruelty, or allowing excessive drunkenness. One film refused classification by the BBFC was an August 1913 newsreel by British Path after it filled Dartmoor prisoners without express permission. Now, what we do know of the plot, though, of this film is that it was about a convict escaping from Portland Prison as a kind of man defying the odds, as Portland Prison at the time was being touted as an inescapable prison, even though there had been successful escape attempts in the past. Upon hearing of the film's completion and plot, the Portland Prisoners Commissioner contacted the Home Office and demanded it be banned. The Commissioner's main gripe concerned the film's potential to inspire actual convicts to conduct daring escapes from Portland. He was especially aghast of a scene showing a bribed warden. He believed this may inspire relatives of the prisoners to attempt to win favor of corrupt officials, including through tobacco and other bribes. A similar concern was the possibility that Portland tourists might photograph the quarry convicts and Portland's prison infrastructure upon the film's release. Thus, to protect the prisoners and guarantee Portland's security, a push was made to remove the film from circulation. In an interview with the Daily Mirror, Portland's prisoner deputy governor insisted that £1,000 Reward was too accurate in its depiction of prisoner life and feared it would subsequently produce wrinkles that could threaten the prison's security. He reckoned Portland's prison's walls would need to be raised by at least 20 feet to avoid photographic scrutiny. Due to all of this, the film was banned and is now among the 80% of silent British films that have since been declared lost. What honestly makes this piece so interesting to me is how it is a very early example of people saying that movies will corrupt society, which is interesting because that really didn't go away until video games kind of took their place. And that wasn't until, about 80 years after this film released. I can only imagine how much media has been lost because somebody somewhere thought that people might get the wrong idea if they consumed it. At number 2, we have 1 o'clock prayer, a partially found Filipino prayer habit interstitial from the 1990s to the 2000s. The Seed Love Devotion is a daily Catholic prayer habit in the Philippines of praying one Hail Mary at 1 o'clock. It was developed by Mama Mary's Movement Foundation Incorporated, founded on May 6th of 1993. It is the opposite to the Divine Mercy, which is prayed at 3 o'clock. Now in the 1990s, ABC5, now TV5, and IBC13 aired a daily 1 o'clock prayer interstitial. The footage accompanying the prayer was said to be unsettling, as it contained the image of the so-called Bloodshed Mary, or Mary crying in blood, also known as the Agu apparition. The segment starts with the time 1 o'clock displayed. The word wish, which stood for Worship God the Father, Immaculate Heart of Mary, Sacred Heart of Jesus, Holy Spirit, is shown, followed by an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, then an image of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The prayer was then narrated. Different pictures of Mary, Baclaran Church, Catholics, and the infamous Agu apparition are shown. A typewriter-like written with the words, Heavenly Father, with Mama Mary, we lift up to you the petitions of our brothers and sisters who are praying now, was shown, and a long pause was seen with a picture of Mary crying with Jesus, said to be the Pieta painting, during the "and at the hour of our death, Amen" part. The phrase, Mama Mary leads us to Jesus, Seed Love Devotion, on Apple Garamond font was then shown, along with the logo of Mama Mary's Movement Foundation Incorporated. It was said to be aired on Cine Classics on ABC5 and before cartoons on IBC13. It was said to have been aired during the late 1990s and early 2000s. While a version that was aired in the 2000s is still available to be found online, the 90s version is not known to be available. I'll be honest, I've always found a lot of Catholic iconography to be very, creepy. And this one kind of sounded like it would have been somewhat scarring to me as a child had I seen it at the time. So definitely interesting, definitely weird. At number 3, we have Animaniacs Hollywood Hypnotics, a lost build of a canceled Game Boy Advance 2D platformer from 2003. Now, Animaniacs Hollywood Hypnotics was a 2D platformer being developed for the Game Boy Advance by Full Fat Games and was set to be published by Swing Entertainment in 2003, based on the animated series Animaniacs. The plot of this game is said to be as follows. Brain's latest plan as part of his daily attempt to take over the world involves using the Warner Brothers water tower as a rocket to blast off into space and send off audio signals that resemble a barking dog. These signals would wake everyone up and cause them to start yelling at each other to keep their dogs quiet, therefore making a loud ruckus. While everyone is shouting and distracted, Pinky and Brain would come and take over the world. Brain waits for Yakko, Wacko, and Dot to do their daily habit of jumping out of their water tower. After they are gone, Brain sets up some speakers and hides them all over the studio. These speakers create hypnotic sounds that put everyone in the studio into a trance, and also makes the studio's actors think they are the characters they're playing, therefore stopping them from interfering with Brain's plan. He instructs Ralph, while he is hypnotized, the fat, incompetent studio guard, to block the entrance to the water tower to keep the Warner trio out. Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, however, are not affected by the hypnotic sounds. They are confused as to why everyone is acting so strange and why Ralph won't let them back into the water tower. They end up discovering one of the speakers emitting the hypnotic sounds and decide to find the speakers and release everyone from their trances. The game appears to have been a platformer point-and-click adventure game hybrid, with visuals similar to the SNES Sega Genesis Animaniacs game. Players would collect various items, examples of which including stools, hats, and cakes, placed throughout the levels, and use them to solve various puzzles, such as helping Mindy escape from a jail cell by using a sheriff's key. The levels would have been themed around various movie locations, with examples being the Wild West, gangster, space, and pirate-themed sets. Various characters, both original and Animaniacs regulars, would be present throughout these levels, either to serve as enemies or to interact with to solve puzzles. Now, as to the availability of the game, the release of the game, along with another Animaniacs game entitled Animaniacs Hollywood Hijinks, was cancelled when Swing Entertainment became the subject of an insolvency procedure on February 11th of 2003. But whereas Hollywood Hijinks eventually received a new publisher and was released as Animaniacs The Great Edgar Hunt, Hollywood Hypnotics remained unreleased, and as of right now, the game has yet to see the light of day in any format. Now, there are many things in my childhood that I love, and two of those things are the Game Boy Advance and the Animaniacs show. I would have been all over this game had I known about it at the time, and I would have been very disappointed to have never gotten to play it. Definitely think this would have been a good game, definitely would have loved a chance to play it. Hopefully one day we'll get that chance. Alright guys, coming in at number 4, we have Archie Comics' Metroid, partially found production material from a cancelled comic book one-shot and miniseries based on the video game from 2009. Now this channel is no stranger to cancelled Archie Comics lines of video game-based comics. We've covered several before, but this one happens to be about Metroid. Now Metroid is one of Nintendo's most iconic video game series and helped create the Metroidvania genre. Nintendo invited Archie Comics to pitch a comic book based on the series, but it ultimately never came to be. So in 2009, Archie Comics pitched a comic book miniseries based on the Super Mario Bros. Franchise. It didn't end up panning out, but Nintendo offered them the chance to pitch comics for 3 other Nintendo franchises, those being Metroid, Kirby, and Fossil Fighters. These franchises were likely chosen as they are lesser known than Super Mario. They also all had games coming up in the next 2 years, with Metroid Other M and Fossil Fighters Champions Japanese release coming out in late 2010, and Kirby's Return to Dreamland and Fossil Fighters Champions American release coming out in late 2011. Pitches for Metroid and Kirby comics were created, although not much is known about the Kirby pitch, and no formal pitch for a Fossil Fighters comic was made. The Metroid pitch was written by Ian Flynn, with concept art by Tracy Yardley and Stephen Butler. The Metroid and Kirby pitches both ended up fizzling out, with Archie successfully obtaining the rights to produce comics based off the Mega Man series from Capcom instead. Ultimately, 3 pitches were made, and though we do know the plots of all 3, it's unclear if Flynn ever penned a proper script. In addition, a user going by Jeff Carson posted some of Tracy Yardley's concept art to comic art fans in late 2012. Later in 2017, Stephen Butler posted some of his concept art to the Stephen Butler Studios Facebook page. It is unknown currently if more concept art exists. Now, I may have mentioned this in a previous video, but in my entire life I have only owned 2 Nintendo consoles, that being a N64 that I bought not all that long ago simply as a way to play Pokemon Stadium 2, and my current Nintendo Switch. While I did have a Game Boy Color and a Game Boy Advance and some other Game Boys throughout the years, I did not grow up with the Nintendo franchises like a lot of other kids did. I was aware of them, but I did not play them, and as such, I have actually never played a Metroid game. People are always shocked by this. In fact, I often love to recount a story of going to a Walmart where the attendant in the electronics section could not understand why I was not super psyched about the Metroid Prime remaster for the Switch. But my personal preferences aside, people love Metroid, they love Samus. I'm sure they would have loved a comic book series, and unfortunately, we never got one.
Alright guys, before we get to that 5th and final piece of spicy Lost Media, just wanted to give you a few announcements for some cool stuff coming up on the channel and for Mr. Sean just in general. First thing, if you've been seeing the community page, you might already know this, but most of the minis on my eBay and Mercari have been discounted to $5 a mini. I'm doing this as a way to make room for new merchandise, as some of these have been sitting there for a minute, and I am trying to clear out my old inventory before bringing in new. So if you want to get yourself a mini, either of the unique or even the spicy variety, now is the best time to do it. This is the lowest they will ever be, and it is a great time to just get quite a few. I will combine shipping as well, so that's another plus. In channel news, I'll be honest, I've been getting a little bored of the RPG horror stories and the neckbeard videos, as to be fair, there's only so many ways to talk about people behaving badly at the tabletop, as well as there's only so many ways for people to say that they dislike women and feminism before it just gets old. So I am rolling out 2 new series on the channel. The first being Urban Legends from Around the World, aka Urban Legends with Mr. Sean. In that series, I will be discussing urban legends. Each one at first will be from a different state in the United States. Once I get through all 50 states, I will move out to the world at large. The next series, I haven't quite come up with a name for it yet, but it will be one where, much like this show, I will look at pieces of media. It'll be 5 per episode, but in this case, instead of lost media, it will be disturbing media. So we're going to look at some of the darker sides of media to talk about that. And of course, this show will still be here, as well as you'll get more original songs being released in the shorts and in full versions. Again, trying to, keep this entertaining for all of you, as well as keep it entertaining for myself. So all of that will start to come out next week. It's some really cool stuff. I'm glad you're going to be here for it. And with that being said, let's get to the final spicy piece of lesser known lost media. Alright guys, today's spicy piece is The Boat Race 1990, partially found footage and radio coverage of a rowing race from, you guessed it, 1990. So, the Boat Race 1990 became the 136th edition of the rowing competition, pitting the University of Oxford against the University of Cambridge. It occurred at the River Thames Championship course on the 31st of March, and witnessed Oxford win by 2 1/4 lengths to claim its 4th consecutive boat race victory and reduce the overall standings to 69 to 66. The race received live television and radio coverage from the BBC. However, the BBC Radio 2 broadcast is infamous for a tragic incident which witnessed lead commentator Peter Jones suffer a fatal heart attack midway through the event. Now, a little bit of background. Following the Second World War's conclusion, the boat race officially became an annual side-by-side rowing event, having first been held in 1829. The race soon became a British institution and was typically held at the Thames 4.2-mile championship course. It attracted numerous fans from across London and worldwide to watch the race in person, despite the fact that the majority were not affiliated with either university. For both universities, winning this race was the ultimate source of pride. However, this era of the boat race was considerably one-sided. Of the previous 14 races, Oxford, in dark blues, had won 13 of them, with its organization deemed superior compared to Cambridge's. Cambridge, in light blues, last won the event in 1986. Thus, Oxford sought their 4th victory on the bounce and to reduce its overall deficit to Cambridge to 69 to 66. The race also enjoyed extensive media coverage, especially in its home nation. The BBC had routinely provided live radio coverage of the event since 1927. In 1938, it began to televise parts of the race live, having eventually achieved a full live broadcast 11 years later. The corporation's coverage had remained consistent ever since. The only disruption would commence from 2005 to 2009, when ITV gained the television rights. For the 1990 race, BBC One would televise it live as part of Grandstand, with commentary provided by Harry Carpenter and Chris Ballieu. Meanwhile, BBC Radio 2's coverage was handled by Peter Jones and Dan Topolsky, with Dr. Treharne Jones fulfilling statistics duties. This marks Jones's boat race commentary debut, though he held extensive experience in other major sporting events like the FA Cup final and Wimbledon. He replaced Brian Johnston for the event, who had covered the race since 1981. In an interview with Radio Times, Jones remarked that there's no event quite like the boat race, having described it as a truly marvelous and nonsensical occasion. So, heading into the race on the 31st of March, Oxford were unsurprisingly backed as the favorites. Beforehand, the Dark Blues had comfortably won a Reading Head event, also featuring the Cambridge crew. Oxford president was Johnny Cyril, who would later achieve gold in the 1992 Summer Olympics coxed pair event.
Other notable names included future 4-time Olympic gold medalist Matthew Pinsent. He, along with Steve Redgrave, spared British blushes at the 1996 Summer Olympics through their coxless pair glory, earning Great Britain's only gold medal at the Atlanta Games. Rupert Obholzer and Michael Gaffney were also experienced names, while Christopher Heathcote earned extensive media coverage as his 175-pound frame made him the heaviest boat race competitor since its inception. Meanwhile, Cambridge contained a generally less experienced crew, their president being Patty Mant. Lisa Ross Magenti became the only female representative of the crew as the light blues coxswain. Cambridge's chances of victory were intensely slim according to most newspaper previews. Thus, with an average weight of 13 stone compared to Oxford's 15, Cambridge would need to use their smaller size to their advantage. Hence, the Light Blues' decision to stay at the Surrey side instead of the Middlesex upon winning the toss was deemed a surprise, especially as Surrey was typically considered the slower bank at the start. Sure enough, Oxford took the lead in the early stages, in ideal weather conditions and a low tide. The Light Blues subsequently upped their pace to 38 strokes per minute to take the lead, but could not maintain it. Consequently, the Dark Blues retook the lead, eventually expanding its canvas lead to Craven Cottage to 4 seconds at the mile post. I have no idea what this means. Oxford very nearly got disqualified by trying to move towards the Surrey side, with umpire Mike Sweeney having deemed there was inadequate space to avoid a collision with Cambridge. It ultimately mattered little as Oxford extended their lead at Harrods before boasting a 4-second gap over Cambridge upon going under Hammersmith Bridge. Despite the pace of Cambridge's Adam Wright in particular, a fatigued Light Blues crew could do little to stop Oxford from doubling their lead by Barnes Bridge. While a late surge reduced the gap to 7 seconds, it was not enough to faze Oxford, who won by 2 1/4 lengths. The win marked Oxford's 4th consecutive win and reduced the standings gap to 69 to 66. Oxford subsequently won the 1991 and 1992 races, but ultimately could not tie the overall standings when Cambridge finally picked up glory again in 1993, and this kickstarted a run of dominance by the Light Blues. Alright, so with all the boring sports stuff out of the way, now time for that spiciness. Since its inaugural 1927 broadcast, the BBC's radio coverage relied on its commentators to conduct announcing duties on a launch boat following the crew from behind. In this case, Jones, Topolsky, and Treharne Jones boarded the launch Arethusa alongside producers Joan Watson and Carolyn Elliott. During the race's early stages, nothing was out of the ordinary, with Jones and company fulfilling announcing duties competently. Jones was speaking as Arethusa passed under the Hammersmith Bridge. Suddenly, commentary ceased. Elliot noticed Jones still had a firm grasp of the microphone, but was completely unresponsive. Communication via his headset and a tap on the back provided conclusive proof that Jones was in a serious condition, and in fact had suffered a collapse. Dr. Treharne Jones promptly tried to revive him through CPR, enlisting Topolsky to restart commentary while medical efforts were conducted. Treharne Jones ordered the boat to continue its course to the finish at Chiswick Bridge, as his medical supplies and ambulances would be present at the Chiswick boathouse. However, a problem soon emerged where Arethusa developed engine issues. Thus, the journey to Chiswick took considerably longer than anticipated at 10 minutes. It also compromised the radio commentary as the boats disappeared from view at the next bend. Topolsky relied on a TV monitor to carry on his report, before transferring the remaining duties to Tony Adamson on land. Arethusa eventually made it to the boathouse only for its crew to be confronted with another critical problem. As recalled by Elliott and Watson, the race commenced on the same day amidst the largest poll tax riots in central London, which injured 113 people. Emergency services were therefore fixated on that event unexpectedly, meaning no ambulances were present at the boathouse. It apparently took ages before Jones was finally transferred to St. George's Hospital. Ultimately, Jones remained in a vegetative state. On the 2nd of April, 1990, Jones passed away at age 60. Initial newspaper reports and Treharne Jones's account indicated Jones had suffered a major stroke during the broadcast. However, modern accounts, including from the BBC, claim Jones collapsed due to a heart attack. Regardless of what the actual cause was, Jones's passing was viewed as a major loss in the radio broadcasting world. Declared among the greatest sports commentators Britain ever produced, Jones began his career in 1965 for the BBC's Sports Report, and a year later he provided commentary for the Group 4 matches at the 1966 FIFA World Cup. He would go on to become one of Britain's most prolific sports broadcasters and even covered 2 royal weddings, including that of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer in 1981. Some, including Sports Journalist Association's Philip Barker, believe the BBC never quite found the right replacement for Jones, and that this tragedy is considered one of the darkest moments in the BBC's long-running coverage of the boat race, and certainly among the darkest in overall radio history. Now, as to the availability, the Boat Race 1990 was fully covered live on BBC One and BBC Radio 2. An interesting aspect of the television broadcast was that highlights from the women's boat race were aired beforehand. The 45th overall, it saw Cambridge win by 3 1/4 lengths, whereas other boat races of this era can easily be found on YouTube. The BBC's coverage of the 1990 edition has yet to publicly resurface. Nevertheless, a news report from Italian channel TMC was uploaded to YouTube by Telesportiva on the 18th of January in 2024, which currently remains the only publicly available footage of the race. No clips from the women's event have resurfaced, and the radio broadcast has also not been found. The BBC and the boat race will likely never release it again out of respect to Jones and his relatives. Now, while I may not be a sports fan, as a resident of Ohio, I know about sports rivalries. Specifically, I am most familiar with OSU versus Michigan, and it sounds like Cambridge versus Oxford is an equally strong rivalry. It is very sad that such a beloved figure in the world of sports and broadcasting would meet his end in the middle of what is one of the most looked forward to sporting events in his country. It is my personal belief that keeping this lost out of respect for him is the right thing to do, both for searchers of lost media and just fans of sports in general. Not all lost media needs to be found, and sometimes that's simply out of respect rather than for some darker reason. And that's the video, guys. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're still trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. While helping us get to that 1,000 is the best way to help the channel monetarily, you can also do so by becoming a channel member, joining the Patreon, giving a one-time super thanks, or heading on over to eBay and Mercari and maybe checking out some of my minis. I'm really looking forward to the content coming up on the future of this channel, and I hope you'll stick around for it. Until next time, everybody, I'm Mr. Sean, this is Chimera Miniatures, and I sincerely hope that you alpha great day, and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the show, we hope you'll stick around. Mr. Sean is here to entertain the crowd. We've got a bit of everything, 'cause everything's allowed. Chimera Miniatures is here to stay, we hope we make you proud. Welcome to the show, we hope you'll stick around. Mr. Sean is here to entertain the crowd. We've got a bit of everything, 'cause everything's allowed. Chimera Miniatures is here to stay, we hope we make you proud.